I'm Sarah, 32 years old, currently on parental leave from my job. It's been 4 months since I welcomed my daughter into the world, and I'm starting to contemplate returning to work. Meanwhile, it seems my husband, Sam, hasn't fully embraced his role as a father yet, despite our daughter's arrival. Sarah, you're not considering quitting your job just because of the baby, are you? Sam's words, uttered right after our daughter was born, were far from the supportive sentiments I expected. Not only did his comment unsettle me, but it also elicited concern from my parents who were present at the time. I'm just grateful our daughter is healthy. Let's discuss work later. Once things have settled, I interjected swiftly, unable to bear the discomfort in my parents' expressions. We've been married for 3 years now, yet Sam's peculiar behavior isn't a recent development. It's been a constant since we exchanged vows. The quirks I once found endearing during our single days now contribute to my daily exhaustion as we share our life together. It's evident that Sam's struggles extend beyond our home life. His frequent reprimands at work and the air of despondency he carries home hint at deeper issues. I'm starting to wonder if I'm just not cut out for this job. Once I get in this funk, nothing seems to shake it off, he confides, his mood lingering gloomily throughout the day. However, by the next morning he seems to have brushed off his worries, returning to his usual cheerful self. Feeling better today? You seemed really down yesterday, I inquire, voicing my concerns. But Sam, with his volatile nature and penchant for impulsive decisions, often overlooks the gravity of his actions. His tendency to misinterpret situations and hastily jump to conclusions frequently lands him in trouble, despite his obliviousness to the pattern. Since our marriage, one thing has become abundantly clear about Sam. He regards his mother's opinion as law. The unusually tight bond between Sam and his mother caught me off guard initially. I often ponder if Sam's daily visits to his parents' house stem from concern for his mother, who lost her husband and now resides alone. Despite having an older brother, Sam's relationship with him seems strained. When his brother tied the knot, the notion of living with their mother didn't even cross his mind, a decision that deeply perturbed Sam. I have a duty to take care of Mom. It's disheartening how my brother left her, Sam expressed, emphasizing his commitment. This commitment is why we chose to reside near his parents abroad. While I had anticipated the prospect of living with Sam and his mother, surprisingly, she expressed a desire to maintain her independence. You two should live your lives fully. I prefer the solace of living alone, she insisted, declining our offer to reside together. Despite her initial refusal, Sam opted to live in an apartment just a stone's throw away from his parents' house out of concern for his mother. This proximity allows him to be readily available whenever she needs assistance, a setup that suits my free-spirited mother-in-law far better than cohabiting with a stranger like myself. Initially, I agreed that living near my in-laws was the most practical choice. However, as time passes, I find it increasingly challenging. I think I've caught a cold. I'm feeling too sluggish to move. Sarah, could you handle dinner tonight? Her frequent calls during my work hours with such requests have become a routine. Not only am I tasked with preparing meals, but I also find myself burdened with a mountain of laundry, all attributed to her purported fatigue and back pain. What baffles me most is that it's always me she turns to for help. I can't fathom why Sam visits his parents daily yet seems oblivious to his mother's needs. When I raised my grievances, Sam's response was unwavering. Isn't that your duty as a wife? Besides, I'm not adept at household chores. His words left me feeling as though our marriage was merely a pretext to enlist my aid in caring for his mother, a realization that deeply disappointed me. Reflecting on it now, my affection for my husband seems to have gradually waned since then. Despite my mother-in-law's daily calls soliciting my assistance, she surprisingly refrains from directly voicing any complaints about the household chores I undertake. However, the absence of even a simple expression of gratitude always leaves me feeling resentful. It appears my mother-in-law deems it only natural for me to attend to the chores at her house, reserving her complaints about my cooking solely for my husband's ears. Her lack of interest in me, beyond my husband, is evident. When I announced my pregnancy, her reaction was lukewarm at best. Yet when my husband shared the news with her, she couldn't contain her joy. It became apparent that her enthusiasm was solely directed towards him. In reality, my mother-in-law already has 2 grandchildren, yet she hasn't had the opportunity to meet them due to her strained relationship with her elder son. Having our child will be like granting Mom her first grandchild. She'll be overjoyed when the baby arrives, my husband exclaimed, his words catching me off guard, suggesting he was anticipating his mother's happiness more than the birth of our child. Despite my hopes, I clung to the belief that once our child entered the picture, my husband's preoccupation with his mother would diminish. However, even in the presence of our newborn daughter, my husband's conversations gravitated towards finances and work, devoid of any immediate display of affection for our child or acknowledgement of my efforts. Money management has always been a concern, given my husband's penchant for spending. I frequently fret over his shopping sprees, particularly the plethora of fitness equipment he impulsively purchases online, most of which never sees the light of day. I had to clear out most of it when I began my maternity leave, I explained, hoping to convey the necessity of decluttering our space. Hey, I was planning on using that. You can't just toss things out without consulting me first, my husband retorted, his tone edged with irritation. Trying to navigate the conversation delicately, I reminded him, with the baby on the way, we need to be more prudent with our finances. Despite my composed demeanor, my husband retreated into silence, refusing to engage in conversation for several days. Given that my parents were set to care for me postpartum, I returned to their home the day after giving birth. Shortly thereafter, my husband rang me up. Sarah, where are you? What about my meals? When will you be back? He inquired, seemingly oblivious to our prior discussions regarding my stay at my parents' house post-delivery. Frustration bubbled within me at his words, voiced just a day after my discharge. I've informed you numerous times that I'll be staying with my parents for a while. Manage your meals yourself. If you struggle, seek assistance from your mother or visit your parents' place, I retorted firmly, my irritation palpable. In response, my husband, sounding somewhat resentful, muttered, Sure, Mom's around every day, but she doesn't lift a finger with the household chores. And she tires of the meals I prepare, insisting I whip up something different. I was left speechless, utterly astounded by the turn of events. Assuming my mother-in-law's deep affection for my husband would prompt her to care for him during my absence seemed only natural. Little did I anticipate what would unfold next. Since then, my days have been punctuated by my husband's daily distress calls, each one a plea for help. Finally reaching my breaking point, I decided to return home, accompanied by my father. What greeted us upon our arrival was a sight that left us both incredulous. Our once tidy home now resembled a pigsty, despite it being just a week since my hospital discharge. Despite knowing full well that history might repeat itself, my father set to work clearing away the mess while I busied myself preparing meals for the upcoming days. In the evening, I reached out to my husband, hoping for even a shred of gratitude, but instead, he merely inquired, When will you be back? Frustration boiled over, and I couldn't contain my anger any longer. Are you not even the least bit ashamed that you can't manage things on your own? I erupted, my voice laced with indignation. Watching me abruptly end the call in a fit of rage, my father, his expression fraught with concern, approached me. Sarah, are you sure everything is going to be all right with raising your child and dealing with Sam? Based on what I witnessed today, it seems like Sam contributes very little around the house, he observed, voicing the concerns that had been weighing on his mind. It felt disheartening to realize that I had been pretending everything was fine, all to spare my parents' worry. But I could no longer keep up the facade. So, I confided in them about my husband's habitual behavior. You're welcome back anytime, my parents reassured me, their words a source of solace in my time of need. Since the birth of my daughter, I've been grappling with frustration and despondency over my husband's actions. Yet my parents' unwavering support served as a beacon of hope. Determined to persevere for the sake of my daughter, the knowledge that I had a haven to turn to filled me with newfound strength. Upon returning home after a month with my parents, the reality of juggling household duties and childcare hit me with renewed force. I never harbored expectations of assistance from my husband or mother-in-law from the outset. Yet, amidst shouldering all responsibilities alone, I found myself burdened with additional chores from my in-laws' household. One day, while at my in-laws to prepare dinner with my daughter in tow, I entrusted her to my mother-in-law's care. However, when my daughter began to cry, my mother-in-law's response was far from comforting. Make her stop crying quickly. Why do I have to babysit? She exclaimed, pushing my daughter back into my arms without attempting to soothe her. It became apparent that my mother-in-law was ill at ease with infants as she made no effort to engage with my daughter on her own. "I've been thinking," my husband proposed. "It's been around 3 months since the birth. Perhaps it's time for you to return to work." His suggestion prompted me to consider the possibility. Considering our household expenses, an earlier return to work would provide a sense of security, and it would also be beneficial for my career to avoid an extended leave. Besides, our savings earmarked for maternity leave were dwindling rapidly. Most of my husband's earnings seemed to vanish into thin air, squandered on extravagant purchases like fitness equipment and other frivolous expenses. I had been meticulous in my planning, intending to allocate the birth allowance for my daughter's needs. Aware that the childcare leave benefit would take some time to be deposited post-application, I took the proactive step of opening a separate bank account before giving birth to manage her funds independently. One day, when I visited the bank to check the remaining birth allowance, I realized the bank book was missing. It's been untouched since I opened it. The only person who's aware of its existence is my husband, I mused, unable to shake off the suspicion brewing within me. Recalling an earlier conversation with my husband as I prepared for hospitalization at the start of my maternity leave, his inquiry lingered in my mind. "I don't need to cover the childbirth expenses, do I? They're covered by the municipality, right? There's no additional payment required from me." It dawned on me that my husband, who possesses a penchant for squandering money, harbored concerns about my financial stability during my hospital stay, fearing I might face difficulties covering the medical expenses. "It's all right. The Insurance Association will cover the expenses upon your discharge. If you require funds for the birth, utilize the account where I've deposited the birth preparation money," I assured my husband at the time. In a moment of casualness, I divulged the whereabouts of the money to my husband. Yet a nagging doubt crept in. Had he accessed the bank book without my consent? Although my intention was to explicitly communicate that the funds were earmarked for childbirth expenses, considering my husband's proclivity for extravagance, I couldn't dismiss the possibility of him misusing the funds. Upon his return from work that day, I wasted no time in confronting him. "Hey, I can't locate the passbook where I deposited the childbirth preparation funds. Do you have any idea where it might be?" I queried, my voice tinged with apprehension. To my astonishment, my husband's response came without hesitation. "Oh, I gave all that money to Mom. After all, it's my earnings, right? I have the liberty to utilize it as I see fit," he retorted matter-of-factly. Stunned, I found myself unable to fathom that the passbook had been handed over to my husband's mother rather than him squandering the funds as I had initially feared. "That money is meant for our daughter. It's not your earnings," I asserted, my voice tinged with frustration as my husband remained impassive, continuing to eat. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Confronting him with the divorce papers I had quietly prepared for just such an occasion, I struggled to contain my anger and tears as I uttered, "Please sign. I can't continue living like this." Although Sam appeared taken aback, he complied without protest. Initially, I had entertained the possibility of reconciling, particularly given the recent birth of our child. However, witnessing his lack of remorse solidified my resolve. Gathering my daughter and the emergency luggage I had prepared, I exited the house. Glancing back at my husband, engrossed in his meal without sparing a glance in our direction, it became painfully clear that he harbored little concern for our daughter. As I watched him reflecting on the hardships I've endured, I made a silent vow that I wouldn't allow things to culminate in this manner. Upon returning my daughter to my parents' care, I wasted no time in initiating divorce proceedings and promptly headed to the police station to report the financial abuse. The money I had diligently saved had been unlawfully utilized without my consent, a clear violation of trust. Though it might be dismissed as a marital dispute if my husband had depleted the funds, I was determined to elucidate that it was my mother-in-law who had accessed the money. Driven by frustration and a yearning for accountability, I chose to file a police report, not with the intention of seeing them punished, but rather to prompt genuine introspection on their part. A few days later, I received a frantic phone call from my mother-in-law. "Sarah, the police are here accusing me of stealing your money. I have no idea what's happening." Her voice trembled with anxiety, making her words difficult to comprehend. But that was the gist of it. In the background, my husband's voice mingled with hers, erupting in shouts of protest. Amidst my mother-in-law's tearful plea for forgiveness, I maintained composure and replied with courtesy, All I did was inform the police about the disappearance of the money I had set aside for my daughter's birth. I explained calmly. Her response was a stunned silence, interrupted only by a trembling inquiry. What? What does that mean? Before I could elaborate, the line went dead. Days later, I was summoned to the police station for further discussion. The police informed me that due to the domestic nature of the issue, it posed challenges for formal treatment as a case. It emerged that my husband had indeed handed over the passbook to his mother, stating, "It's my earnings, feel free to use it as you wish." Aware that the account was in my name, my mother-in-law proceeded to withdraw the funds. The bank account where the passbook was transferred held not only the remainder of my maternity benefits but also gifts from my company totaling nearly $10,000. The bank's security camera clearly captured my mother-in-law processing the withdrawal. Upon investigation, the police informed me that my husband expressed remorse and pledged to reimburse the full amount. They suggested that given the nature of the situation, I might consider withdrawing my complaint as it was a domestic matter. My intent behind filing the complaint was for both of them to reflect on their actions, though I heeded the police's advice and withdrew the report. However, I was left puzzled when the police later visited them. Yet the situation took a drastic turn as both my husband and mother-in-law were apprehended. During my absence while visiting my parents, my mother-in-law attempted to obtain a loan from a credit card company using my ID card illegally. Despite her unsuccessful attempt to borrow money, it led to an accusation of attempted fraud, resulting in my mother-in-law's immediate arrest when the credit card company lodged a complaint against her. In light of their close relationship, my husband was also apprehended on suspicion of involvement in the incident. I couldn't help but wonder why my mother-in-law was driven to such desperate measures, resorting to borrowing money under my name or relying on assistance from my husband. Upon closer inspection, it became apparent that my husband's extravagant spending habits mirrored those of his mother, who exhibited a similar disregard for financial prudence, resorting to borrowing from various sources. When her pension proved insufficient to meet her mounting debts, she contemplated borrowing money under my name during my absence. However, the presence of a photo on that ID card rendered it impossible for my mother-in-law to utilize it, leading to the situation being classified as attempted fraud. It was a thoughtless act, to say the least. My husband, who had no involvement in the illegal use of my ID card, was swiftly released. However, he appeared unable to resume normalcy, consumed by worry for his arrested mother. While I empathized with his concern for his mother, my priority was for him to diligently work towards repaying the money he had taken from me. Despite my reservations about trusting my ex-husband, I took proactive steps by enlisting a lawyer to ensure the repayment amount was deducted directly from his salary. I heard murmurs that my ex-husband was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy due to the debts incurred for himself and his mother-in-law. Yet my sole concern was to prevent any disruption to the repayment owed to me. After some time, a familiar face paid me a visit, none other than the police officer who had assisted me throughout this ordeal. There was a sense of déjà vu in our encounter, and upon further conversation, it dawned on me that he was a former classmate from my student days. He appeared to have maintained concern for me since that incident and paid a visit to check on me today. "It's been a while. I barely recognized you. You've become quite the respectable police officer," I remarked, noting the transformation in him. With a hint of shyness, he replied, "Has anything significant happened since then?" Truthfully, I recognized him as Sarah right away. In the following days, he made several visits, always using the excuse of not being here for official business, which I found somewhat amusing. As our conversations continued, I discovered that he, too, was single, and with each encounter, I felt the reunion evolving into something more, a budding romance. Perhaps this time I should take the initiative and pay him a visit.